here.
Okay, we're gonna, the next thing on the agenda is our good friends from WCS are going to talk to us about anything they want to share, talk to us about. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, everybody else. Yes. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sherry Furnett. I work in technical services for WCS. I'll do my best to fill in for Rod today. I'm not making any promises. For site operations, for fiscal year 2013 to 2014, which would be September 1st, 2013 to August 31st, 2014 through the end of February, WCS disposed of 6,700 cubic feet and 5,510 curies low-level waste. In compact of that total was 3,200 cubic feet and 570 curies. As far as operations, that's really all I have to report, so if you guys have any questions. No?
Well, I was looking back through my notes. I was at the Waste Management Symposium last week, and I just wanted to tell this for people who are curious about such things. In terms of the volume that is disposed of at various places, it turns out that the budget for the Barnwell, South Carolina facility, which takes care of the Atlantic Compact, is based upon a disposal volume on an annual basis of 7,000 cubic feet. So one of the things that's happened, and I'm saying this for everybody's benefit, is since 1993, when the compact was signed, is that there has been a great reduction in the volume of the material being generated that goes to disposal sites. And so the underlying assumptions associated with what were the predictions in 1993, the industry practices have changed those significantly. And I understand and appreciate what WCS has run into, because in 2003, when they filed an application, even at that time, there was more volume projected that the business now looks at. So one of the results of that is that the site was designed with certain volume in mind, but the volume actually being generated to go off-site disposal is reduced, and that's all I wanted to add to what you said. In case I said something wrong, you could correct me. So that's one of the practical issues that we're dealing with in terms of low-level radioactive waste being generated in the United States now. So, anyway, anything else you want to tell us about what's going on up there?
If I could actually ask a
Go.
question. So I know you indicated 6,700 cubic feet to date, and of that 3,200 cubic feet was in compact.
Correct.
So it's almost 50%.
Correct.
That from previous meetings, that sounds like the percentage has gone up. It's higher for in compact. So you're seeing more in compact waste being shipped.
We are. The utilities that are in compact have been sending more waste recently.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jane, go ahead.
You don't have a breakdown on Vermont or Texas, do you?
I don't. I can get you that information, but it is significantly more Texas at this point.
At this point,
Yeah. Last year we had a lot more from Vermont.
Yes.
But in this fiscal year it's been more Texas.
Okay, that's all I need.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate it. That's item 9 on our agenda. Item 10, and I guess I could take this on with Karen here. It's discussion and possible action to designate the commissioner to pick up warrants. And this results from a comptroller's audit where they looked at us and discovered that since Milton Lee left the commission last year, I am the sole person who is authorized to both approve warrants for bills that we get, and to pick up the warrants once they've been approved, and they want those functions separated. And we pointed out that we didn't have a vice chairman anymore, and he was not with us. And so what we're trying to do here is to have a designation of another commissioner to, other than me, to pick up the warrants if any are, if we use warrants. Now, the odd thing about this particular finding is for the year in which they made the observation, we did not pick up a single warrant. All of the payments were processed electronically and direct deposited. So there were no warrants to pick up, but they noticed that we had that I was the only one. And I keep telling these people that they better take really good care of me for that reason, but I think that they're not interested. So, John, we have tentatively said, because John now lives in Austin and works in Austin, that we thought it would be appropriate that somebody else be designated. And what this means is they would have to sign the appropriate documentation and form work with the state of Texas comptroller to authorize them to pick up the warrants. And then once that happened, they would, if we had warrants that we needed to be picked up, they would physically, John would physically have to go to the comptroller's office to pick them up. And so I didn't explain that part of it to him, but I need to make sure that he's comfortable with that idea. So if he is, then I suppose, what does this take care of motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and second, thank you, to designate John Salzman on behalf of the commission as a person, as a commissioner who is authorized to pick up warrants once they are approved. And all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Am I supposed to vote on this?
Yes. You're free to vote on it, John. You don't have to. Don't worry about the conflict of interest thing. But everybody can vote on it, including you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. I mean, nobody's opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. Now, John, we'll get the paperwork to you so you can be authorized to do this. We'll straighten that part out with council. Next is action on our bylaws. And again, I want to introduce this by saying that when we first started, we set up some bylaws that are that Jim Krause, who was with the Attorney General's office, Jim couldn't be here today, but fortunately he sent Karen, and fortunately from all sorts of perspectives, to be with us. And we have noticed that some of the things in the bylaws need to be addressed. And again, when we were looked at by first our own auditors, our private auditors, and then the comptroller, they noticed some things we need to make some changes. And now I'm going to turn it over to Karen to let her talk about these.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson. Other than the things that the chairman has mentioned, the bylaws are being revised to clean up some grammatical errors and to change them to conform to how the commission actually does business. For example, we had an import advisory committee and an export advisory committee in the bylaws. Well, that's not the way we operate. We have one technical advisory committee. So the bylaws were changed to reflect how we actually operate. The other significant change is one that did come out of the audit, not because the auditor suggested it, but because we realized that it was something of a problem. We have not had a vice chair for quite a while. And Chairman Wilson has been very concerned, as he has expressed repeatedly, about being the only one who can do certain things that only the chair or the vice chair can do. We have now made a provision, or I have proposed a provision to go into the bylaws that would allow the commission members to vote to temporarily appoint a presiding officer should we ever be in a situation where we were without a chair and vice chair. That is obviously a very temporary stopgap measure. We hope we get a vice chair soon, but in prudence, we needed to plan for that very remote possibility. All the other changes are really to clean up grammatical errors and to address issues that were raised by the controller in the audit.
Thank you, and just as a bit of history for those of you who have been around for a while, I have missed one meeting in the last few years, and that was because I had a concussion as a result of a bicycle accident. So that's something that is something that I have been concerned about, that I am the only one to do certain things on behalf of the commission, and this is to address that possibility. Under Texas law, the governor appoints and designates a chairman and a vice chairman. Both of them have to be from Texas commissioners, obviously, because the governor couldn't do it otherwise. So we just need to accommodate that, and particularly there are some fiscal matters that we need to address, but in addition, just presiding at meetings, our bylaws did provide that the chairman presided, or the vice chairman in my absence. If we don't have a vice chairman, can't be a meeting. So we need to fix that, and that's one of the things we're talking about. So with that, what I'd like to hear is if everybody is comfortable, are there any questions about the changes in the bylaws? And we distributed to the commissioners slightly in advance of the meeting, I guess, a version showing the changes from the existing bylaws together with a cleaned up copy. And so everybody on the commission has them. And with that, I would love to hear, if there are no questions or discussion, a motion to approve the changes, but I can't do that yet because Ms. Haddon is going to ask us a question. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, we would love to be called on for public comment. Just a question. I don't doubt that the nature of these changes, but this is not, the proposed changes have not been made publicly available, and I'm wondering if they will be, if there's a way to see the two documents.
Ms. Haddon, this is peculiarly something that's within the ambit of the commission to do, to designate its own bylaws. So
Sure.
the answer to your question is, if the changes are approved, we'll post the new set.
I understand that it's within your purview, but it would be nice to be able to compare the two documents. And it would be nice to see ahead of time what changes are being made. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments?
In my new role as proofreader, page 6, section A, last sentence, it's just the M is missing, all approved minutes of recording. I don't know how much mistake we want. So, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other things that you've noticed, Jane? All right.
There are a couple of things, one of which Commissioner Morris noted and one of which I noted. On page 1 in section 2B, the first line, there is a missing T. It should be the commission, not he commission. And then on page 10, Article 6, section C, section 6, subpart D, there should be a space between what should be the last two words of the first line. It should be or space other. And those are the only ones that we have found.
All right. And I'm going to assume that the typographical changes that you're noted will be corrected to the thing that is distributed, but the actual vote will be on the corrected with the typographical changes that you've made approval of the bylaws. And I also assume that for purposes of a motion, it should be to approve the bylaws as changed in toto as of this date. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And
Go ahead.
Dick has been part of this process and has proved it all.
I can't tell you for sure, Jane, that I don't know what he has seen and given a chance to approve, but.
But he's been part of the process, so I'm sure.
We've been talking about bylaws as we went through our meetings, yes.
And certainly, this is an overhaul of the whole bylaws, and if Commissioner Sodick sees something that needs to be changed.
He can bring it
then-
back.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
This isn't something that's intended to be chiseled in
Right.
stone and cast in concrete forever. So if we need to change something again next month, we can do it. Okay, well, I'm ready for a motion to approve the corrected bylaws with the notations on the typographical errors as distributed to the commission. Somebody wants to make a motion, so let's do that. So moved. I heard a motion to approve the bylaw changes. Is there a second? Motion been made and seconded to approve the bylaws, reenacting them, if I could restate it, with the changes as suggested, including typographical corrections. Is there any discussion among the commission? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Let me get that. The next item is and this is for commission action, possible action to proceed with contract not to exceed $2,500 to develop a state of Texas risk assessment. This is one of those things that we get from time to time from the state of Texas because we are funded by an appropriation from the legislature, thank you to the legislature, to fund us. But that means that there are things that the state of Texas has in place that they think we need to do. This is one of those that came to us in an email suggestion some time ago, and it was that we should develop a Texas risk assessment report. We talked about this internally, and aside from the question of whether or not we were required to do it because we're not a state of Texas agency, it seemed to us to be a reasonably good thing to do because it would be good for us to take care of it and get it done. And so Ms. Ing suggested that she knew of people that had performed similar assessments, developed risk assessments, and discussed them for other agencies. And she contacted one of those people who sent us basically it was a letter in the nature of an agreement that she would undertake to do and estimated the cost at $1,200, as I recall. And when I looked at the terms of the agreement, I had some questions about it because she cited charges on an hourly basis, and her estimated cost was $1,200, but there was no upper limit on it. So we decided to bring for the commission's attention a request for a motion to approve proceeding with a contract not to exceed $2,500 to give us room for her to get familiar with our operation and the way we work, to develop a state of Texas risk assessment report that we could then submit to the state of Texas in compliance with the request made of us because of the appropriation that we get. So that's a background explanation. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
I guess I just wonder if she said 1,200, why we couldn't say that you'd go up only a certain percentage? I mean, why we doubling?
We thought about that, and one of the things that I did was ask for a copy of, I didn't know how many people would be involved. And so I asked for a list of the hourly rates, because the proposal said basically they would charge at their usual hourly rates. And I didn't know the mix of people, and so I thought that it was my call to say, okay, let's just double the estimate, because she's fairly confident it'd be less than that. We don't expect it to get up to $2,500, but that we just had I wanted to put a not to exceed level in the agreement, and that's the reason I did it that way. All right, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Judge? Okay, motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion to approve, the action to, proceed with the contract not to exceed $2,500 to develop a risk assessment. Any other questions? Not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Next item is my report, and in giving my report, I wanted to say that I've been trying to stay out of trouble, but I've been unsuccessful. And in particular, there are a couple of things that I wanted to let everybody know. First of all, we are undergoing two audits. Our own audit that we hired an auditor for, I think that one is largely concluded. We just haven't received the final report yet, and we've paid a significant portion of the cost, but we don't have it yet. And there are a couple of things that flow from that, and that's the audit for our for our fiscal year that, I can't remember the fiscal year anymore. It ended.
This is the audit for 2012, and we are still awaiting putting out a proposal for 2013.
Yes, okay. The 2012 fiscal year audit, because we haven't received it yet, and there were complications there for all sorts of reasons. The auditor was the first time they'd come in and looked at us, and they had to learn a bunch of things about us, and we worked through a bunch of those issues, and I think we've successfully done that, where their report is coming up. And then on top of that, the state of Texas comptroller audited us for a subsequent fiscal year. And that audit and our responses to it is also under, excuse me?
I'm sorry,
Same year? Okay. That audit is also the focus of a different set of issues. And I'm saying that because one of the big things we've had to discuss and one of the big issues we have with the state of Texas, because they give us an appropriation, and appropriations are all approved by the legislature, they don't have, we are a square peg trying to go into a round hole. And the round hole is, you're a state agency. And we say, no, we're not a state agency. The compact says we're not a state agency. Texas law says we're not a state agency. Federal law says a state agency. And oh, by the way, once the compact is consented to by Congress, we're under federal law, not state law. They said, you're a state agency. So that was one of the big arguments we have with the comptroller, and we've had issues that spin off from there. And the other issue that we've had with them is they say commissioners need to do the same thing that state employees do. And we say, wait a minute, we are not state employees, particularly our Vermont commissioners are not state employees of the state of Texas. And so the compact says, and Texas has embodied this into Texas law, that we're entitled, the only compensation we get, and it's not compensation, it's reimbursement for our actual and reasonable expenses associated with being a commissioner. The comptroller apparently feels like they ought to extend certain limits on us that are related to state employees, and we're very frugal. None of us is a big spender. but there were a couple of issues that came up. We are working through those issues. And then the comptroller's audit had some other things, one of which we just fixed by changes in the bylaws. The comptroller was the one that said I was the only one authorized both to approve and pick up warrants. And so we're addressing issues like that. But I have to make a confession, and Lee, of course, knows this, and Audrey knows it, and Karen knows it. I tend to lose patience with this kind of thing because thank goodness that Karen and Lee and Audrey are around to pick up the pieces when I create havoc, as I am reacting to what I think about some of these observations, and they have a very tough job to the point where we've all decided it's better that I not go to these meetings. So I tend not to go to them. So that is one thing that has been occupying us. I have been occupied, and this is part of my report. I became curious after our last meeting in January, and Charles knows this, by the notion that WCS was authorized to accept for disposal materials and take them to their RECRA landfill. So I have been asking questions about the procedures associated with doing that to see how that fits within the Compact Commission's requirements, and we don't have good answers to those questions yet. Charles, we initiated discussions with TCEQ. TCEQ is just one of the state agencies in Texas that's involved with that. Department of State Health Services is also involved with it. We're certainly involved with it. Site operators involved with it. The generators are involved with it. Everybody has a piece of it. Not only our compact, but other compacts are involved with it, because, for example, if you're in a compact as a generator that requires you to export material to get an export permit from us before it's sent even for disposal in a RECRA landfill, that we have to work all this out. And we have just begun the process, but this is one of the expansions that's going to happen to our rulemaking, because we have to figure out how we're going to accommodate the ability now of WCS to take these materials to come in and put them in their RECRA landfill. There's some other related questions, but I'll skip that and go to the fact that while we were initiating these discussions, I was at last week in Phoenix, as was Lee. She was there a short period at the Waste Management Symposium in Phoenix that's held every year, where people come in from literally all over the world. There are probably between 2,000 and 3,000 people there from all over the world, and there was a huge discussion about a lot of things involving low-level radioactive waste. And some of them we talk about from time to time. For example, the so-called phantom 4 materials that are in low-level radioactive waste, the iodine, the depleted uranium, I guess, is one. The other two are carbon-14, and what's the fourth one? Technetium-99. And the reason these are items of interest are because they are exceedingly hard to measure. And so people estimate them, and there were a lot of discussions about how that should be handled. The other big discussion that I was particularly interested in at the Waste Management Symposium was on the type of attribution. For example, a number of the generators and brokers in particular say there's an attribution problem because compacts generally say we have to have, in Texas case, we have to have our agreements with generators. Well, if a broker takes in a bunch of material and they've had it in their possession for a number of years, as a number of them have, how do they have attribution? How do they show attribution? Much less where it comes from, either in the United States or whether it originates outside the United States, because all of the compacts have prohibitions against disposal of material from outside the continental United States. There was that discussion. And I learned a lot from listening to that, and I'm glad I went to hear all these discussions. There's a debate going on that we'll hear more about next week in the low-level radioactive waste forum meeting, which is being held in Austin. TCQ is sponsoring it together with, I've forgotten who the other sponsor is. Who's the other sponsor is? But the low-level waste forum, TCQ is a co-sponsor of this. I expect to hear a report because there was a discussion about Part 61 of the CFR. And it's part of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission regulations dealing with the classification of low-level radioactive waste. And basically, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been directed to examine how they list low-level radioactive waste. And they want to move to something that Texas is talked about today, a performance assessment evaluation rather than looking at specific radionuclides. There is a huge question about what impact that would have on compact and state laws and whether it's even valid for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to make a change in their rules and say all of the states which are handling various levels of this by agreement, you've got to change your law or you're no longer an agreement state. It could be that as a result, but they're not proposing to do this anytime soon, fortunately. They've got about 2 or 3 more years to just look at it before they're even making a report. After the Waste Management Symposium meeting, there was a Friday morning session that I was not able to stay for, where NRC ran the session. The panel that I did attend on Wednesday morning had waste generators, waste brokers. Bill Dornsife from WCF was there, Rusty Lindbergh from Utah, a whole bunch of people who are with compacts, generators, regulatory people. They all had the same question: should there be a change? And if so, how the change can be accomplished? Nobody knows a good idea yet, but it's something that, again, I make speeches about the fact that we have changed so much since 1985, actually 1981, when Texas passed its first law setting up the low-level radioactive waste disposal authority. Rick Jacoby was back there, was its executive director for 17 or 18 years. And then we moved to a different system with Texas being in a compact, and then in 2003, the legislature passed a statute authorizing a private company to have a low-level waste license, because before then it wasn't allowed in Texas. So there have been all of these changes, and the compact is fairly rigid. It was set out in 1993. So one of the things we're trying to do is how we can accomplish what we need to accomplish in light of learning about the actual operations of the way the waste disposal business operates in the United States, from the way it's generated to the way it's packaged to the way it's shipped to where the brokers interact with it, all of these questions, and ultimately how WCS wants to adjust as part of the whole process. And our rulemaking, therefore, and I don't think small, unfortunately, is going to end up looking probably at all of these various things. And so with that, I'll just conclude my report by letting y'all know a few things that might come up in the future, so nobody is surprised when we look at these things. That's what I wanted to say. Anybody have any questions for me? I noticed I'm hearing grumbles from the commission. I've talked too much. Lee.
Good job. Those meetings are good.
Yeah.
And this is my report to address agenda item 14. I just have a few quick things to say. One of the things I wanted to mention is yesterday we added a table to the reports and more page of our website that includes the disposal of volume and activity at the facility up to and through February 28th, 2014. The way we have it broken out is we have all volume and activity for in compact and then out of compact through August of 2013, and then subsequent to that, we break it out quarterly. We'll continue to update that table quarterly. The data that we get to put into that table comes to us after it's been QA and QC'd from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I've also added, for those of you who are interested, the operating budget for 2013 on our Reports and More page. I'd also like to thank folks for all the comments that were provided to us today about the website. I'll be contacting our website contractor to make some changes associated with how we hyperlink and what color those hyperlinks are, as well as some other comments that were made today. And I'd like to encourage additional comments to come about our website so it's more friendly to everybody who needs to use it. That concludes my report.
All right. There's one other item, and then I'm going to come back to something, but the next item on the agenda is dates and locations of future meetings.
Currently, the only meeting that we have scheduled is for Thursday, May 15th, 2014. I will remind you that there needs to be at least one more meeting before the end of the fiscal year, August 31st, 2014, to address issues like the budget, the legislative appropriation request that we will need to submit for the next session, legislative session in Texas, and then any contracts that you would want to renew, update, or that currently exist would need to be considered.
We had a brief conversation about this, just beginning to conceive of it, and this is for the commission. The question is, do we want just one meeting? And if so, when would that be? It would have to be in August, or do we want to have possibly two, one in July and one in August? And the reason for that is that we have discovered that at the end of a fiscal year, now operational year, there could be requests for curies to be added or new import agreements to take up available curies to go to the site during an operational year. And we will know then much better, because shipping containers are due to be delivered and tested pretty quickly. It's one other thing I learned at Waste Management. So the question is, do we want to have one meeting after the May meeting, or possibly two, one in July and one in August? And this is just a question for the commission itself. And if so, we'd have to try to target when those meetings might be. Any ideas, suggestions? Do you want us just to pick dates and schedule them, or does everybody want to? Jane,
We
please.
talked at the last meeting that it might be, instead of coming up in November, you might want to schedule a meeting in August in Vermont. But it was just an idea. It's a good
We
time
could
to
certainly
go.
do that. We like going up there in September and October also, but we could have two.
No. No,
So-
whatever the commission wants, but I thought it.
Okay.
Might be
We could certainly do that. It's a little bit,
just one.
okay, you're thinking one meeting?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just thinking one meeting in Vermont. I
Oh,
mean, it would
okay.
be- It's a lot to ask all of you to
So the question is, how much flexibility do we want to build into our schedule? And the other notion is, we could tentatively schedule a meeting, and as our compadres in Utah do, we could cancel it if we don't have enough room.
Mr. Chairman, one issue I would bring up is it seems that in the past, when we get close to the end of the disposal year, we have questions, and we have entities who either give up curies and or need curies.
Yes.
So perhaps a meeting in early August would be necessary. The question is, do we need one in July and August?
Well, that was what we were talking about that last night, as a matter of fact, Lee and I were, about whether we want to have one the first part of August to let people, because it seems to me, John, that by that time, folks ought to know what their schedules are going to be.
Correct.
Between then and the end of the year. Early July, and then maybe if we needed to do a cleanup later in August, we could do that or adopt a budget or whatever we
Sure.
wanted to do. But it's up to the members of the commission. As you know, I've got to be there, or at least I did have until you voted to amend the bylaws. So what's the preference of the commission, one or two?
What can we vote on in Vermont?
Karen?
Well, certainly you can vote on import agreements and amendments to import agreements.
But then I
We've done
guess
that in the
everybody
past.
would have to come. I mean, that would be pretty much, that would be hard,
You'd
right?
need a quorum.
I meant the people that have all that, so might
It's-
not be.
I don't know that it's a lot harder for them to come to Texas. What's the difference between come to Texas or come to Vermont?
Mhm.
For people with import agreements, they're coming from someplace else anyway, so. Does WCS have a preference or an opinion?
I think we're always willing to have more meetings, so if people have applications or amendments that they want to present, they have that opportunity. If we don't have any more, we can always cancel it.
Well, but we will have the issue of a budget that we'll have to put in and some things where there are some commission actions that were absolutely required, so.
Yeah.
Or will we be ready to have those, to complete those actions by July, early July, or is it really gonna be necessary that we have that August meeting for those items?
My answer is gonna be that it's probably necessary to have an August meeting, but I don't know what Lee has in mind.
We can do whatever you request.
I would suggest that we consider a meeting in July and then one in August, and perhaps we would cancel the meeting in July if it's not necessary and just hold the meeting in August.
I mean, what I would probably suggest doing is to assume that everything that needs to be approved by the end of the fiscal year, we would set it up so that if you wanted to, you could do it in July. And then if there's questions or for some reason it couldn't happen, because of additional data needs or something like that, we'd still have August.
And I would say, I think it's probably better if the budget is acted on in Austin.
Somebody have dates that they wanna suggest in July, John?
The 10th is a good date. The 17th is not a good date. And
If we get to the 24th, we might as well start thinking about August.
right,
So it looks like the 10th. How does the 10th look for everybody?
Yes, it's good.
Jane?
Not likely for me, but Peter or Dick could probably, you know. I have to be in Massachusetts on the 11th.
Okay.
I realize it's getting later in the month, but I can do the 24th also.
Yeah, definitely not. Wednesday and Friday have meetings in different parts of the country, so. But don't worry, we have two other commissioners, so I'm sure one or both of
But
them.
neither
can
one
make
of them
it.
is you.
So,
Okay. What about the 10th? All right. We'll tentatively set one meeting for the 10th of July. What about August? Lee, I know you have a problem in late August.
Early August, actually.
Early August, okay. Anybody have a meeting suggestion date for Austin for August if we need one?
So, the 7th is not good for you, Lee?
No.
I won't be here.
Okay. That's not good.
It'll be a very good day for me, actually, but I won't be here.
14th or the 28th?
How about the 21st? Or is that too late to materially?
21st is good for me.
I can do the 14th or the 21st, so.
14th would be better for me. I know I can't make the
Okay,
21st, but I can make the 14th or the 28th.
okay. Why don't we do it the 14th then?
Okay.
Are we gonna,
Yeah.
I was was gonna ask about location. Are we gonna tentatively say that meeting will be in Vermont, or?
I think we'll tentatively say both of them will be in Texas. We may consider, as, given the remarks this morning, holding one of them in Austin and one of them perhaps in another location in the state. So, we'll work on that, on the location, but we might wanna diversify out a little bit, given the reaction we had this morning, and, you know, a lot of people are interested all over the place.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we may want to do it in, there are 2 sites proposed for, under the Legislative Study Committee for a possibility of high-level